The Rock became second the full-length film in the career of director Michael Bay. The first was the film Bad Boys, which was released in '95. The director himself says that The Rock is the best film of his entire career. Michael Bay became something of an action director in Hollywood. His films are filled with explosions, a lot of explosions and military equipment, and slow motion. You can watch any movie from his filmography, Armageddon, Bad Guys, Pearl Harbor, Transformer, and you will understand that there is action on action. His history of directing music videos before working on feature films undoubtedly played a certain role in his style, but before Bay became like this as we know him, he managed to do worthy action movie which we like so much, watched on TV and on tapes. And this is a movie Rock, released in '96. The Rock will become the first film of 3 action movies in a row for Nicolas Cage, then they will come Face Off and Con Air. Initially the director's chair was offered Tony Scott, but the director refused for the benefit of another project, while Tony was working on the film The Fan, with Wesley Snipes and Robert De Niro starring. Interesting fact, but one of the co-authors of the script for this film was Quentin Tarantino. Nevertheless, Quentin insisted so that his name does not appear in credits on the film script. In addition to Tarantino, Jonathan Hensleigh and Aaron Sorkin worked, but they are also not listed in the credits. Hensleigh was especially disappointed with this factor. As in many action films, the success of a film depends on the chemistry between the main characters, and The Rock can boast one of the most unlikely couples in film history. One day the producers told Nicolas Cage that he could never work in action films because he was too quirky, and the actor then accepted it as a challenge. By the way, a significant part of the main character's lines were invented by the actor himself. Cage wanted his hero to give up curses, and also insisted on a scene in which he sits half-naked in his apartment and plays the guitar. After filming, Cage admitted that his main task was demonstrate a new type of character in dynamic action films. His role was recast several times in the final version of the painting, and it was already completely different from what was written in original script. After filming, the actor will say that he was amazed atmosphere in the prison itself, considering it depressing and creepy. Arnold Schwarzenegger was offered the role of John Patrick Mason, but at that time the script was only 80 pages long, and the actor refused because he didn't like the rough draft of the script at that time. Although in consequence Arnie will be regret that he refused, then information comes up that Schwarzenegger for real was considered for the role of the character Nicolas Cage, not Sean Connery. What's interesting, the actor who played the Commando also was considered for the role of Cage in the film Face Off, which would unite his duet with Sylvester Stallone. The last one was considered for the role of John Travolta in the same movie. Connery himself agreed to the role of Mason, having learned that Nicolas Cage had already received the role of Goodspeed. Despite what Sean Connery's character is main hero, John Mason will appear on only 25 minutes into the film. Sean Connery eventually wanted for the producers to build for him small house on Alcatraz, considering already the venerable age and authority of the actor, as well as the reluctance of every shooting day spend a lot of time on to get to the island. The producers met him halfway. John Patrick Mason was first captured in 1962, the year Connery first starred as Agent 007 in the film Dr. No. Locked in a cell, Mason tells Goodspeed that he remembers moment when prisoners could not speak in the cell. Actually, this is the rule ended in 1937, before Mason was locked up. Assuming Mason knew this, he was probably just making fun of Goodspeed. This was Bay's second full-length feature project, and he was very worried that Sean Connery, famous for his devil-may-care relationship with directors, won't want to listen to him on the playground. However, the actor led myself worthy called the director boy, and could even get a big deal out of Disney's shooting budget.
Car chase in San Francisco turned out to be the most great experience that I have ever experienced in my entire life film career.
The director added that obtaining permits filming in the city requires thousands of signatures, and when the film crew fell behind in production schedule, 3 leaders studios arrived on platform to talk to him seriously. And then to him Sean Connery addressed, which also produced the picture, and he asked Bay where is he going, and then the director explained that he had a meeting with management. Connery asked Michael if he could accompany him. Bay in the end was only glad, and when they are together profits to the conference room, everyone was surprised when they saw that Connery appears with the director.
By words Bay, Connery then came to his defense, and insisted that the director was doing your job is good, and should be left at rest. Sean Connery also supported Nicolas Cage when he insisted on changing the name character from Bill Goodspeed to Stanley Goodspeed. Sean has always been careful and practical. I never won't forget that first day, when he was on the set and I took out a coin. We used counterfeit quarters from Hollywood Magic Store, triple size attached to the rod that I twisted in front of the lens. I was lying on the floor under Sean's chair and spinning a quarter. At that moment I felt myself idiotic. Connery starred in 75 films, and I didn't think that he let me use this stupid film school trick. And then I looked at him. I will never forget the amazing James Bond smile, which he smiled at me, as a sign of approval. Michael Bay initially refused to film this picture, but 6 months later, he said yes.
The story just wasn't enough serious for me.
According to the director, the script was written much more pragmatically and more seriously than the final film. Most of the humorous moments and lines were improvised during filming. Actually, there were 3 men who succeeded get out of Alcatraz alive: brothers John and Clarence Anglin and Frank Morris. After many months of contemplation planning, the trio successfully escaped island prison in June '62. Then the trio disappeared and were not found. Authorities. If look logically, then it is unlikely that the President of the United States will appoint someone aged 33 for the position his chief of staff, regardless of its origin, because this person simply won't have enough political experience, not to mention already about life experience, to occupy such high position. What's interesting is that Ford and Carter had chiefs of staff, aged up to 35 years old. For the sake of the credibility of some fighters from Navy SEAL teams played real Special Forces officers. Later actor Michael Biehn, who plays Commander Charles Anderson, admitted that he was afraid to take on responsibility for real soldiers. At least this is what happened in the movies. Poisonous substance VX, from which a person is in terrible agony dies in a few seconds, actually exists. In fact, it appeared in the 50s as a result of a mistake. Wanted to make a pesticide, but it worked out chemical weapons. VX in huge quantities available in the arsenals of America and Russia. Goodspeed asserts that VX is the most deadliest compound ever invented, although as we all already know, Soviet substance. Newbie 5 times and 8 times more deadly than VX, and designed so as not to be detected, and from which harder to defend. At the beginning of the film, General Patterson says that a teaspoon of VX is lethal within a radius up to 100 feet. Later, when Goodspeed pushes whole VX ball in mouth soldier, nothing happens to Mason, not with hostages or anyone else nearby on the island. The film is dedicated to the memory of producer Don Simpson, who died in January '96 when the film was still in production. Simpson died of heart disease failure after many years' excessive consumption of prohibited substances. Which is interesting, but exactly on filming Rock, Bruckheimer and Simpson decided to dissolve their partnership. It is precisely stated that all this was due to the problems of Don Simpson. The couple then released such hits, like A Cop from Beverly Hills, and Bad Boys, so that Michael Bay doesn't lose focus during production process. Acting cast and crew. The group specifically kept news about Simpson's death as a secret. The film was released on screens before Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson debuted on television and received world fame. Today, if enter the word rock into the search engine, then by no means we are not guaranteed to receive results about the '96 film. Movie The Rock became hit, grossing $335 million at the box office, and consolidating its success on VHS, where it entered the top 10 best-selling films of that year. The Rock also gave new turn Sean Connery's career, and making Nicolas Cage as an action star. Despite for the difference, aged 32-year-old Cage and 65-year-old Connery made an excellent on-screen duet. It's a pity that the Cage got lost in the passing pictures last time, but he has a chance because he's still only over 50. Rock for today day is considered one of the best films directed by Michael Bay. Director, by the way, wanted to make a sequel several times. The last time he mentioned it was 2017. The sequel could be about the adventures of Patrick Mason. The Rock approached the big screens very hard. Producers, who worked on it, Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, came out of protracted crisis associated with judicial litigation with Paramount Studio, with whom they had multi-year signed contract. Citizens allowed for the studio several box office hits including Flashdance, Beverly Hills Cop and Top Gun. Retreated in 1990 with the film Days of Thunder. Due to different arrangements between producers and studio, final box office, the movie wasn't enough for that to happy everyone left. Paramount Studios accused the producers of waste and squandering of funds, demanding return about $20 million that were spent on the Days of Thunder. Bruckheimer and Simpson long resisted, but eventually broke contracts, and paying the penalty went to Disney Studio. It was at that moment that they fell into their hands several scenarios at once, with which they started studying at a new studio. Among these scripts, there was a Rock. However, a problem immediately arose with The Rock. Scenario demanded huge amounts of money for those times. $80 million for just one movie Disney studio refused to issue. Especially the producer's first work on the studio turned out to be a fiasco. Comedy action movie The Ref with a Bang failed at the box office, failing to recapture even your small budget. Instead of one big movie, Bruckheimer and Simpson tried to extract $80 million from the studio to 3 other paintings. These films were Dangerous Minds, Crimson Tide, and Bad Guys. The last one happened funny situation. Under contract with producers of the film from production, which the studio completely refused. Which did not happen in the case of The Rock. Bruckheimer and Simpson could have been filmed on another studio. That's exactly what happened with Bad Guys. Based on the idea of a comedy about two cops, studio I immediately put up a cross, for the idea itself was deeply secondary. In fairness, the scenario with which the producers tried to launch Bad Guys at Power Disney was completely different. It was very a silly comedy about 2 New Yorkers police officers, and the main roles were supposed to be played Jonathan Lovitz and Dana Carvey. When with this story the producers went on Sony Studio, they got the go-ahead, but they asked to make a lot of changes to the plot, and the film's budget was reduced by 2 times. As a result, white police officers became black police officers. But because of budget restrictions, filming had to be moved to Miami. While work was going on, these 3 producers did not give up on projects, put The Rock into work. It is unknown what would have happened to the script Rocks in case any of the 3 Bruckheimer's production projects and Simpson failed. Maybe the movie is like this, never saw the light of day, as is often the case happened those times with hundreds of action projects. But Dangerous Minds, Crimson Tide, and The Bad Guys performed in cinemas are excellent. Especially this concerns first 2 films. After triple box office success from the citizens, the Disney studio gave the green light. Film script, how it is often it happens. At that moment I faintly reminded the final version we all know. The film was much more serious and darker. Here the project had every chance of becoming long-term construction. But at this moment Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson finally quarreled. By agreement between them, The Rock was supposed to be the last tape, which they will work on together in order to quickly get rid of it asset. The producers did not delay search for a director, but just pulled up to Michael Bay project, with whom they are not bad, worked on The Bad Guys. Shooting were very heavy. If in budget Bad Guys studio control was minimal, then in The Rock studio Disney watched Michael Bay's every move, and many decisions had to be pushed. Fight movie. Sean Connery received $12 million for The Rock, and with it, the producer's chair, so which could directly influence many decisions regarding the film. According to Connery, Bay was a great director, and neither in one of the decisions of the young director. Throughout his work he had no doubt. Sean Connery would later call The Rock the best one of the films he starred in after 90th year. Improvisation on the set became even more active and the studio stopped interfering in production. Test runs the tapes at the studio went well, but all the viewers complained about sagging in middle of the movie. Michael Bay it's right away corrected by putting a race in the film San Francisco. Originally scenes hero Connery left the hotel in ninja style. Many have probably noticed a strange shaking while showing the actors' faces in cars. All the actors had everything one has 2 days to shoot, so they filmed in a studio pavilion, because the field trip was difficult to arrange for each of them. About an explosion in the middle of the city. Same, it was not possible to reach an agreement quickly, so he was arranged in a different place. But in the one where they filmed it, just set the car on fire and tried to use special effects. Everyone's career citizens involved in the production of the tape Let's Go Up the Hill. No one else has Michael Bay controlled at Armageddon, filmed on the same Disney studio, Bruckheimer. Any money was allocated for his film, which ultimately led to very sad consequences. Sean Connery began to receive $20 million per role, and Nicolas Cage after that they began to call action superstar.